That Nickelodeon poll they do, kids pick the president.
Yeah, the kids kick the president thing, yep.
Well, the real election coming up so fast, I got curious, what can we actually learn from that, especially when we look at it next to like the serious election analysis that's going on?
I mean, on the surface, it's pretty interesting. The kids, they picked Harris pretty clearly, right? 52% to 48% for Trump. But the real thing that makes you think is how different that is from what the grown-up polls are showing us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, over 32,000 kids took part in that Nickelodeon poll. That's not nothing. Then you look at, say, 538. They track all those polls with registered voters, use all that fancy statistical modeling, and they're saying Harris is only ahead by like 1.4%.
And that right there, that's kind of the big thing to remember. That Nickelodeon poll, sure, it's fun, it gets people talking, but it's not like a prediction tool.
Yeah.
Got to understand why that is, First off, obvious point, those kids, they can't actually vote. Their opinions matter, of course, but they don't equal votes.
Right. It's more like, are kids paying attention to politics at all, that kind of thing?
Exactly. And also important to remember where this poll is happening. It's on Nickelodeon, right? Part of some TV special. So the goal is entertainment for kids, not hardcore political analysis. Plus, we don't even know their methods for the poll. How did they pick those 32,000 kids? Are they like a good representation of all American kids? Without knowing that, you can't say, oh, this is what all kids think.
So like, comparing that Nickelodeon thing to a super scientific poll, like what 538 does, it's kind of apples and oranges. Just for anyone who's not familiar, 538, they're really into the nitty-gritty, collecting data from tons of polls, adjusting for biases, using all these models to get those projections. Totally different world than an online poll on a kid's network.
Oh, absolutely. But even if that poll's not telling us who's going to win, the Nickelodeon thing still has value, I think. It gets kids thinking about, like, the whole political process, even just a little. That early exposure, it can stick with them.
I can see that. It might even be a way for families to start talking about the election.
Yeah.
Right? Like, parents can use it to get their kids thinking critically about the candidates, their positions, all that.
Precisely. It's like planting little seeds for them to become, active citizens later on. Imagine these kids, years down the line, remembering that first time they kind of voted, how it made them feel part of things, even in a small way. That can be powerful.
Definitely more upbeat than some of the stuff we see in those adult polls.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we've got this CNN poll here, and, well, it's kind of worrisome. Seems like only 30% of registered voters feel confident that Trump would actually accept the results if he loses to Harris.
Yeah, that finding, that's something to pay attention to for sure. Shows there's this growing anxiety, right? About whether our elections are really fair, whether people will accept the outcome, the whole potential for things to get messy. Pretty different vibe than that lighthearted kids poll.
It makes you think maybe that Nickelodeon thing, even with all its limitations, it still has something to teach us.
Yeah, it might. Could be a reminder, right, about how important it is to teach the next generation about democracy, about respecting the results no matter who wins, having civil conversations, all that, working together to make our system stronger.
Sounds like we've got a lot more to unpack here.
We do, indeed. We do. It's funny, right? That Nickelodeon poll, sure, it's super basic, but it might actually show us something about what matters to kids, what grabs their attention. We can't be like totally sure about anything from it. But it does make you wonder, why do they seem to like one candidate over another?
Yeah, for sure. Like, is it possible they're just picking up on different stuff than adults? Could be personality or the way they talk. Maybe that appeals to kids more.
It's possible, yeah. Kids, I think they often go for someone who seems, genuine. And if someone's funny, that helps too. They also seem to care more about stuff that hits close to home for them, right? Like schools, the environment, that kind of thing.
So maybe they're not so focused on the, super detailed policy stuff. More like the overall message, the candidate's story, maybe. It's like they're seeing things with a fresh perspective,
Yeah.
Not all jaded like some of us grown-ups can get.
Yeah, it is refreshing, isn't it? Makes me think, what if we were making a kids pick the president poll? How could we make it fun, but also actually get them thinking deeper about this stuff?
Oh, I love that. Instead of just picking a name, what if they had to, do little research projects about what the candidates believe? Okay, here's what candidate A says about climate change. Now, here's candidate B. Get them actually comparing the ideas, not just going on gut feeling.
That'd be great. We could even give them those, what-if situations. Candidate A wants to do this green energy thing, but it might make your parents pay more taxes. Candidate B, they want to keep taxes low, but maybe that means more pollution. make them weigh the good and bad like voters do in real life.
Oh, that'd be so cool to see kids trying to figure out those tough choices. And imagine like a pretend debate or a town hall where they get to ask questions directly to the candidates, or actors playing them at least.
I would totally watch that. Let them ask about stuff that matters to them, like school lunches or making the playgrounds better. It'd be adorable. But also, you could learn something from those questions.
Absolutely. And, okay, what if there was a creative part too? They could make campaign posters or write jingles, really getting into how elections try to persuade people.
Now you're talking, it's like a civics class, but disguised as a fun TV show.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, if we get kids thinking about this stuff early on, we'll end up with a generation that's more informed, who thinks things through, and who are honestly less freaked out about the future of democracy.
That's a goal worth striving for, right? But let's not forget, this isn't just happening in America. All over the world, young people are speaking up more and more about the things that matter to them.
Oh, you're right. We can't get too U.S.-centric here. This whole idea of wanting to be involved in politics, it's global.
For sure, it's like everywhere. Young people are facing these massive problems. Climate change, social justice, the economy, and they're not just going to sit around and wait for someone else to fix it. They want action now, and they're finding ways to make themselves heard.
You see it everywhere. Student protests for the climate, online activism, all that. They're organizing, getting people together, putting pressure on the folks in charge. Pretty inspiring to watch, honestly.
What gets me is they're not afraid. Like, they don't have that cynicism some adults get, that feeling of, oh, it's all rigged. Anyway, they're pushing for change, and they actually believe it can happen. That energy, it's kind of contagious.
Totally. They remind us that, yeah, change is possible, that hope is important, and that we all got to do our part to make the future better.
And it's not just about, like, making people aware of the problems. They're actually coming up with solutions, holding people accountable, making sure those in power actually do something.
And the way they use tech, social media, it's amazing. Yeah. Getting their message out there, finding people who agree with them all across the world.
Yeah, it's a huge force for change, and it's making everyone rethink how we do politics. It's not just about voting anymore or writing to your senator. It's about starting movements, getting everyone working together, and demanding a place at the table.
So we went from talking about a kids poll to like a whole global youth movement that's changing how politics works. Who knew?
Well, it is all connected. When you think about it, these things, they might seem totally different, but they're all part of the same big conversation about being active citizens, getting involved in politics, and speaking up no matter how old you are.
Like we were looking at things close up, and now we've zoomed out. And what we see is this whole generation that's saying, nope, we're not staying silent anymore.
And that gives me hope. It means the future isn't set in stone, right? It's something we make together.
So what does all this mean for us, the listeners? What can we take away from all this?
The big takeaway, I think, is this. Doesn't matter how old you are, what you believe, where you come from. You have a part to play in making the world better. So don't be afraid to ask questions, to push back when something seems wrong, and to demand better from the people in charge.
Yeah. Voting, protesting, even just having a good conversation with someone who sees things differently. Every little thing helps. It all adds up to a more just, fair, and sustainable future.
And hey, remember that CNN poll we talked about earlier? The one that showed people are worried about the election?
Yeah, the one that was kind of a bummer. All that anxiety about whether things will go smoothly.
Okay, but what if we flip that around? Instead of getting all stressed about things falling apart, what if we put that energy into making a system we can trust, where we respect the results no matter what?
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of, all that doom and gloom, what if we put our energy into making things better? A system where, hey, we trust the process and we can respect the winner, whoever it is.
It might sound, I don't know, too optimistic, but I really think we can get there. Imagine everyone working together, Putting unity first, not division. Respect. Instead of getting all angry at each other, and instead of everyone fighting, we actually try to solve problems.
Yeah. Where we all say, okay, democracy, it's messy, but it's ours, and we got to make it work. It's like we got to change our whole culture, not just how we do politics.
You got it. It's about feeling like we're all in this together, right? That democracy isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we build together. And hey, maybe those kids from the Nickelodeon poll, maybe they're the ones who figure out how to do it right.
I could see that. They're growing up in a totally different world, right? With different expectations, a different way of looking at things. Mm-hmm. Maybe their generation can actually fix the problems that have been around, like, forever.
They just might. It's their world after all, right?
Yeah.
They're going to have to deal with all this stuff. So it's up to us, the older folks, to give them the right tools, the right values, to help them face those challenges and build something better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for everyone listening to think about. What can you do, even in a small way, to help make that better future happen?
Doesn't matter what it is. Volunteering, having real conversations with people who disagree with you, just being kind and understanding in your daily life. Every little bit counts.
Remember, the future's not set in stone. It's something we make. It's in our hands. And that's kind of amazing, right? So keep asking questions, stay curious, and don't forget how powerful your voice can be. Thanks for joining us.